Hi everyone, that was fun. Really enjoyed it. Well, it's only because the government has no confidence in being able to grow the economy and jobs that they're having to put up, obviously, benefits, but also I think because it's an acknowledgement of the cost of living increases, and that was really clear in, I think it's page 32 of the budget, 32 or 33, where in the child welfare report, basically the wellbeing report, where it talks about the fact that the costs of living have gone up so much, including rent and also inflation. So I thought there was an acknowledgement that costs have gone up. Well, you'd hope so in terms of things, because we realise that the cost of living has gone up under this government. Unfortunately, quite a lot of that's around housing costs, and a lot of that is actually being driven by the government's own quite knee-jerk reaction towards people who actually provide housing for other people. So I think, unfortunately, many beneficiaries will be absolutely needing something, and our focus would have been on building jobs and actually getting them into work.
But surely you must be kind of optimistic on some levels. I mean, on every conceivable economic measure, pretty much things to do better. GDP, unemployment, even the forecast deficit is shrunken as well. Surely you must be happy with that.
Well, none of it's being driven by the government. I'd say New Zealand businesses have been absolutely focused on trying to make the best with what they've got. And I think too is the fact that if you look at individual businesses, they won't be growing. People in the tourism and travel sector, they're certainly not excited about this budget. But if you're asking for what we thought about the budget, we just thought it was a budget of a broken compass budget. There was sort of nothing in it other than more cost onto or payment to beneficiaries. There were some other things in there in health, but when you look at really health, even it's about almost $500 million going into setting up a restructure of the health system without any particular reason to believe it will have better outcomes. And at the same time, only $200 million extra to Pharmac, and I think it's over 4 years, and that's not much when you've got to talk about the cost of drugs and cancer drugs in particular. Well, I think we have to at the moment because the cost of living has gone up so much under the current government. I mean, anyone thinks it's not. Well, look, I don't know if it's the right amount, but I think that something had to happen because of the massive cost of living. And you look at the accommodation supplements, so about 360,000 New Zealanders now having to have their rents topped up by the taxpayer. I think it's an indictment on a government.
Just to be clear, are you saying that you support the government's moves to increase benefits?
Well, we think after 4 years of Labour, something had to happen because the cost of living has gone up.
Yes.
We don't want to see people not able to feed their children. The trouble is, most of the things the government's talking about today is actually predicated on more people and benefits, such as more food in schools, more these sorts of things, rather than saying, well, we've got a plan to get New Zealand going and a plan to get people into higher skilled, higher paid jobs.
Michael, a question for you on child poverty. Mm-hmm. That seems politically like a pretty easy sell. What do you make of the government's focus on this budget?
Well, I think it's necessary, but as the leader says, the real disappointment about this budget is that there is a complete lack of energy around the job creation that will keep people out of poverty. We're seeing a huge amount of money being put into things to keep them going, like the health system, but nothing new for innovation. Small businesses, they're spending more money getting a Meccano set created at Dunedin, where they could have purchased them for $110 million less than they are on supporting small business innovation.
So what's your take on this focus on welfare and bringing children out of poverty?
Well, it's necessary. But the really important thing is not to put the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but to prevent people from falling off the cliff in the first place. And we have had COVID. There were unemployment. But the budget projections are now for only 40% of the job growth projections that we had 3 years ago. In a post-COVID period, we should be creating more than 3,700 jobs a month. We used to create 10,000 jobs. $50 million for farm.
No, it's not, clearly.
No.
I mean, clearly you can't buy the drugs that New Zealanders need. And that's why in the election campaign we promised, I think it was $280 million for Pharmac particularly, to increase the because, as we know, if we can get these drugs, often the cancer drugs in particular, in with people early enough, we can actually save their lives and save all the other distress that goes with people with very severe illnesses.
And the deeply disappointing aspect of the health appropriation is that they're actually putting significantly less into DHBs this year than they have in the last 2 years. It looks like they're taking the money out of the DHBs to fund the restructure. That means that instead of paying for things like cataracts, cancer treatment and hip replacements, they're paying it on bureaucrats to restructure the deck chairs. I think that is a damning indictment on this government.
Yep.
Are you worried about what extra money for benefits might do to rents?
Well, I think quite clearly what will happen is that there's nothing there to make it easier for people to get houses built in terms of developers and others. I think there's no relief there for in terms of the extra taxes that are put on landlords. And I think actually what's going to happen is that we're going to have the accommodation supplement, which is currently being paid to 360,000 New Zealanders to top up their rent. I expect that's just going to get even higher.
You spoke of the health restructure, but is there anything else that you'd cut back on at this point?
Well, a lot of it wouldn't be necessary if we were in government. I think it's really important that we wouldn't, for instance, cut the budgets or the funding for police and corrections as it seems to be in this budget on initial look at it. We wouldn't, for instance, be prioritising or removing the funding to get prisoners into work when they leave prison. But that's been cut down to just 1 year now, rather than the ongoing work that we were doing to rehabilitate and get people into work. So I don't know why they've done that. They certainly didn't address it in their speech.
And I think the main issue is we wanted to see a plan to get us back to prosperity.
Yeah.
This budget doesn't deliver that. It's not forward-looking. The reason why we've got to grow the economy, we need to create new jobs. So we've got 200,000 people on the unemployment benefit, job seeker. We need to get them into better, high-paying jobs. That's why we need to grow the economy to deal with not only the financial situation we find ourselves in, but also to make sure that people can get ahead and live better lives.
Yep.
Who missed out on this budget?
I think working people did. I think people who work for a living, who pay their own bills, who work 2, in some cases there are even some people who work 3 part-time jobs. I think they missed out hugely, and there was an opportunity for the nurses to be able to get something. There was something there, possibly there around taxes, but they chose not to take that. I mean, what we saw today is that quite a big increase in benefit payments, but actually at the same time that our nurses, who actually did the work around COVID, are being told that they can't get a pay rise for another 3 years. So I just thought it was a bit of